back on another exciting episode of Starfleet Boy, where we have a casual and informal conversation about Star Trek. Today we're focused on Star Trek, the animated series, and we're talking about the episode Yesteryear. And we do have Fadri here, and we might have Ruben here, but we have Sub Commander Tall definitely decloaked to be
Greetings.
here. Greetings. So yeah, Fadri's rebooting the ship's computer. So he's gonna be here in a second, and then I'm not sure about Ruben, but we have a Ruben. No, actually we have a Guardian of For Never. We were wondering what you were gonna do for today's discussion.
This was a tough one. This was a tough one for sure. And
My
then
bet
I wrap
was
myself in gray, and I'm the rock around the Guardian of For Never.
You're gonna be You gotta take this off later because you're gonna be sweating in that thing. It's already warm in my costume. Like I can only imagine what you're feeling there. But Ruben, my bet was on you dressing like kid Spock, like teenage Spock. In those boots.
I wanted to find like a little pink beanie thing and a beard to be that one guy.
Oh, the healer.
Yeah, I couldn't find thought I had the right beanie, but I didn't have it.
Well, I'm glad you're here. We also have in our audience and in our live chat, we have Benjenium here. Nice to see you. We have Joel. We have Braxton. Our good friend is there, and I'm sure more folks will come on in. And again, Father will be back in a second, but I guess we'll go ahead and get started. Cool. We have Geek Filter in the audience. That's our friend Aaron Harvey. Hello, Lex Luthor. Oh, is that what? Like he does.
It's something of that vibe to
him. That's funny. Who would like to do the episode summary?
Gosh,
I'll do it.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, I mean, I'll try it. I saw this episode one time this morning at about 8 o'clock.
And it's like your first time,
not too complicated, I think.
Wait, have you seen this one before? Or was this one new to you?
I thought I had, but I think I just had heard so many people talk about it. Like, this is a really classic episode from the animated series. I mean, it's a really well-regarded one. But when I watched it didn't feel familiar. I mean, I think maybe I've seen clips of the end of it, but yeah, I don't know. I'm sure Father E could deliver a much better summary than could I, so I'm happy to yield. But I'll give it a try if no one else wants to do it.
What do you say, Father? You want to do the summary, or shall we let some Commander Tall, who's seen it the first time, pretty much do it today?
I can do a quick summary.
All right. We all like passing the summary to Father. It's like it's a thing.
The crew of the Enterprise returns to the Guardian of Forever and go on a temporal historical excursion to the early days of Orion, but return to discover no one has any memory or recollection of Spock as first officer of the Enterprise, and records show that he died as a child. So Spock figures he must need to go back in time and correct history, that he wasn't available to go back, and that's why there's this change in the timelines. So he jumps through the Guardian of Forever and goes to Vulcan when he was a child, and went on a Vulcan rite of passage into the Vulcan Forge, where he appears in the guise of his cousin to aid his young self. And
Tom Selleck. Just kidding.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I didn't think of that.
Well, speaking of I can't think of what they're called now. Ichaya.
The Celots.
Celots, yeah.
Celot, yeah.
Celot.
I wanted to, but the young Spock's Ichaya pet, the big teddy bear, is injured, fighting off the saber-toothed tiger creatures. I can't remember what they're called right now either. I need to go get my Worlds of the Federation book.
The Godzilla. The Godzillas, the baby Godzillas. Because that was straight up.
That's the sound. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
I think it was like the matcha or the imacha or something like that. Imacha is like what I remember.
But the young Spock has to let Ichaya die, and when Spock returns back and appears to have set everything in history correct, except there is one difference, and this time a pet died. Nimoy delivers that line beautifully, and that's the bittersweet ending. It's an emotional journey.
It is,
especially if you're like a pet owner.
Yeah, this episode gets me every time. By the way, it's Le Macha. You guys thought that he looked like Godzilla?
Well, no, the sound.
No,
the
sound effect they used.
Oh, you're right.
The original.
Yeah, the original.
That whole thing.
Yeah, the original.
That's right. I didn't even think about that, but you're right. It does. He does. The Le Macha sound like Godzilla.
He sort of looked like a cross between a dragon and a battle cat from He-Man.
Well, that is a good summary. Thank you, Fathery. Let's go ahead and dive right into it. What did you all think of this episode? Why don't you go first here, Guardian of Forever?
I bring news from all time. It's okay. I mean, I don't know. I don't really expect much from this show, so it doesn't really like. I guess I'm just waiting for an episode to really like blow me away in some way, but it was okay. I guess I didn't. It's a time travel episode, and I always have issues with time travel episodes. So, and I this one particularly even more than most time travel episodes. But I enjoyed it. It was a fun little 20-minute sci-fi romp. I think that I get why people like it. I get why it's regarded as one of the better episodes. The story with the dog and the dealing with death was very interesting. I just think Futurama just did it so much better with their dog story that it cannot be topped for me, and I saw that first. So
Ruben, I think Chaya is a cat. I'm not 100%
whatever.
Sure,
so it looks like it has walrus teeth.
It's like a teddy bear.
Yeah, he does look like a teddy. Yeah, I guess you can't really compare.
It's like a bear walrus.
That's how they described him in Journey to Babel, was as a big teddy bear.
Teddy bear, yeah, it's true.
With 6-inch fangs.
Dr. McCoy's like, a teddy bear. Tell me more, Spock's mom.
We did a comparison episode, says Aaron, that never went out, I think, comparing He-Man's history with Spock. Interesting. That is interesting. Very cool.
Hey, how about, sorry to interrupt real quick, how about after the animated series, forget Deep Space Nine, let's do He-Man. That's
we could do that on we could totally do that on Starfleet Boy After Dark.
Yeah. Anyway, just think about
it. Sounds good. Well, let's hear what you had to say about this episode as pretty much a first time viewer of this episode, Sub-Commander.
Yeah, I liked it quite a bit. I mean, it's a lovely little story. I think I agree with a lot of what Ruben said. I mean, in general, I'm not a huge fan of time travel stories. They don't always make sense, but they didn't really linger on that. I mean, you kind of wonder, well, right. Spock always saved him, but yet he only saved him if this timeline didn't work. They don't linger on it. So it's mostly about what happens to young Spock and this emotional journey of living up to his father's ideals and making this choice of being a Vulcan and having the bittersweet moment of his pet dying. And I think all that's really effective. And, even though I complained in the last episode and probably will in future ones that the acting feels a little flat because it's sort of animation and they're maybe not giving 100%. I didn't feel that as strongly in this episode. I thought a lot of those lines were delivered nicely, and there were some poignant moments. I mean, it was interesting for me seeing how much this episode, some of the aesthetics of this episode, influenced later Star Trek, like or even what they did in terms of the Vulcan city in the remastered version of Amok Time looks very much based on the city in this one, or Spock's home, the quarters there. You can kind of see that resonating with how they conceive them in the Strange New Worlds version of just the big windows and kind of the dome and stuff with looking out. So I thought that was kind of interesting, and it was a nice story, and they treated it seriously. I mean, they didn't treat it like a little kid cartoony sort of thing. I mean, I like that they had a child front and center in this episode, and I thought the child actor did a reasonable job, right. Especially with some of that made up Vulcan language dialogue. I mean, that's hard to deliver that stuff with and make it sound real, but
and a child dealing with the euthanasia of a pet, which is pretty hard hitting animated kid show,
Absolutely. And
an experience, I think.
Pets, so.
Also, an experience I think a lot of young people have at some point. Especially if you're like Spock's. Chaya used to be Cerec's So he was already an older dog, and so, or sorry, I said dog now. he was already he was already an older wolf bear, and an older Salat, and so yeah, it was right on. So yeah, but an experience I think all of us who have had pets maybe have experienced.
Yeah, and I love that they got Mark Leonard to return
Mm-hmm.
as Cerec.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that. That was interesting.
How much of Vulcan's the DC Fontana work on?
I mean, she did most of the big Spock stuff in the original
Right?
series. She was kind of like the Spock writer.
Right.
I mean, she didn't do
well, she rewrote This Side of
a mock
Paradise.
time, but the other
she didn't do a mock time, correct? Yeah, but Journey to Babel. I mean, certainly the Spock
other big
family
Spock stuff.
Yeah. But yeah, no, and it very much felt like a DC Fontana script that she was, writing seriously. It would have been interesting to see how this could have been done in live action, and maybe with perhaps a little bit more detail and that kind of thing. But yeah, no, I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Yeah, but also if you did this in live action, it would be harder to do some of the desert stuff and the creature stuff. So.
Oh, you get the guy, you get Janos Prohaska to put on one Horta and then put on the Mugatu and just go back and forth. One thing I will say, it's like it reminds me a little bit of my little disbelief in seeing some of the beasts on Tatooine and Return of the Jedi. It's like, how does this desert, with no, hardly any vegetation or anything, support these monstrously huge life forms? But anyway, it's fine.
larger animals tend to have a more efficient or even a slower metabolism. I don't know if you knew this.
Okay.
So it is possible that they could like whales, like I think blue whales,
I like the bird crew member.
Oh, the historian,
yeah.
that hawk historian.
The Aarakocra from D&D. That's what they called in D&D. The bird people.
Here's a cool thing from
mustard
Aaron.
yellow bird creature.
We'll talk about those guys. They're in They come back in Lower Decks too. Young
or
Spock
do they?
Was...
It's debatable.
Well,
what bird
that's right.
species is in Lower Decks, because there's two that are introduced in the animated series. You have the Score, and then the Aurelians, I believe, is what the student
which one
is.
were these?
Aaron will let me know if I'm right or wrong, but the Score come later in the episode Jihad.
Yeah,
it'll be a while before we get to that one.
Aaron also is pointing out young Spock was Billy Simpson, who grew up to be whimsical Will from the Dr. Demento. He actually mispronounced a lot of the words and so the cast had to go back and re-record them the way that he did them. That's funny.
Fascinating. I know they ran into that with the Pirates of Orion and Orion. I mean, I've heard of that, but one of the disadvantages, I guess, not being together is you get different pronunciations.
Star Trek's destroyed English.
But the cool story on young Spock, that if you buy Aaron's book, you can read about it in there. But they actually, if I recall correctly, they recorded his audition, young Billy Simpson, when he auditioned for this. They had him read all the lines, and then when they told him he had the job, they were just like, yeah, and we're just gonna go ahead and use what you recorded in the audition, so you don't have to come back in. We got everything we needed.
Really? Okay.
But he does give a good performance.
He does.
So,
it's pretty good. Yeah.
Good thing they were recording it, because
that is pretty funny though. That's
I
like,
think,
we don't need you. We got everything we needed on the on the.
But a lot of the writing, I think Dorothy Fontana's writing is really strong in this episode, and she definitely always took stuff like continuity very seriously, and like getting the Vulcan culture right, getting Spock's backstory right. And so this is really kind of a tradition that they have in the original series, where they'll follow up on ideas or stories from the original series. In a lot of ways, this is a follow-up to Journey to Babel. We're getting like the Spock backstory stuff visualized. We're seeing a younger Cerec and Amanda when they're raising young Spock. We get to hear him being teased at school, and they definitely build on that in Star Trek 09 when they show us kind of the exact same scene in a different timeline. They even like quote some of the same dialogue. I think it's here that Sarek says, logic offers a serenity that humans seldom experience. When Spock's trying to figure out, is he going to grow up to be a Vulcan man or a human man? Which culture does he want to lean into? And Strange New Worlds continues to build on that kind of dilemma with Spock and trying to figure out his place which camp he belongs into. And I always kind of gravitate to those characters that are kind of like torn between two different worlds. I always find that very relatable. What else? What we were talking about with not only like, are there a lot of aesthetics that are used in future Star Trek, but also like some conceptual stuff. I believe this is the first time it's ever brought up that Endorians are a warrior race, unless that was like in a novel or some, I don't know, like 60s or 70s fan fiction. But they build on that in Enterprise.
I think that's the first time they're described as warriors, but in Journey to Babel, Thela, or whatever the name of the head Andorian ambassador says, "My people are a violent race," but we had no quarrel with Captain Kirk. So at least it's kind of mentioned. But she, maybe she just expanded that and kind of, went with it.
And for some reason, they colored him gray instead of blue here. But then they use that in Enterprise, and they introduce the subspecies, the Enar,
or the Enar, yeah.
Then we get one of them in Strange New Worlds. So it's really cool how later Star Trek would use a lot from this episode. And I consider this, this is, that top tier Star Trek. I think it's right up there with like, The Inner Light or City on the Edge of Forever or Duet or, a lot of those, a lot of like these newer shows I love, I enjoy, but I feel like a lot of them, like they haven't gotten like this level of just like one of these timeless, memorable episodes that it's like a real tearjerker that'll make you cry, but also like adds a lot to the Star Trek mythology. So yeah, I love this. It's one of the best in my opinion.
I think what sometimes the best episodes, they're not even really that science fiction-y. I mean, you can kind of take out the core of what this episode is about, and it's sort of, I don't want to, it's like a human drama. I mean, it's, how you feel about your parents and how you feel about making a choice in your life or the loss of a pet. And yes, it's in this whole sci-fi milieu and there's world building, and that's all great. But the core of what's really, wonderful about it is just how relatable those emotions are that we all experience in life. Just, questions about family and how to live. So I think, some of the best episodes are in some ways not super sci-fi-ish.
Yeah, I think Star Trek does that very well. It's often, stories about the human experience and about humanity. Similar to like how Shakespeare's writing is often, it's all focused on the human experience. And, there's stories of real human emotions and experiences and things like that. So yeah, I agree completely. I think the Star Trek, I'm sorry, the sci-fi stuff is sometimes kind of the set dressing for like these very like real relatable human emotional stories.
Right on. All of you put it so well. I don't have anything else to say for my part as far as why I love this episode, but I do love it. And also, thank you so much. Aaron just shared his graphic that he made for the Predestination Paradox timeline of Yesteryear. And this is pretty neat. So it shows you the original timeline over here in a yellowish orange color, and then alternate timeline in red. And I think Aaron's got this up on Twitter too, or he has put it up. I believe I've seen it, but let's zoom in real quick and take a look at this. But so the original timeline is during his Kazwan. By the way, I wonder if Kazwan was said correctly, but it looks like it was. Vulcan maturity test. Spock's life is saved by his cousin Cerec when he was attacked by a wild animal. And then, this is cool. It's true in Strange New Worlds, Spock still has Ichaya because that hasn't been
as a
changed
teenager. Because this is well, there is one difference, Captain. This time a pet died.
Right.
So after Yesteryear, Ichaya dies earlier than he did pre-Yesteryear.
Yeah.
It's impressive they got that right.
Yeah, it is really impressive. Spock tells Christine Chapel as a teenager he was bonded to his pet Shalat Ichaya. Ichaya lives out his natural lifespan. So then Yesteryear happens, and I love following this little arrow. Here's the alternate timeline, and we get, hold on, let's see, Yesteryear. Okay, it's when Spock and Kirk return to the present, they find the timeline has been altered. Spock died as a child, and an Andorian, Commander Thelen, is in the role of Kirk's first officer. It's concluded that Spock's cousin was actually a time-traveling Spock, and since he was in Orion's past, when the historians replayed Vulcan history, that he couldn't be in two places at once, so he died as a boy. This conclusion may have been reached based on the Guardian's particular rules of time travel, which is pretty true. Also, hey, That's a neat concept for like what if like the Andorian first officer. It would have been interesting because he's still an alien, and so he still has like all these like kind of quirks that humans would not have. But
I'm sure it's just a coloring goof, but it makes it look like he has the Cage version of the science uniform where the collar matches the color of the shirt rather than being set off in black.
Oh yeah,
Right.
yeah. Or in that alternate timeline, it's like that. So Spock again travels back in time. This trip to his childhood, he takes on the role of his own cousin, Cerec, and while he does save his younger self during the Coswan, even teaching himself the Vulcan neck pinch, this time Aichaya followed him into the desert and was attacked by the wild animal, causing his death. So the repaired 2269 returning to present, Spock finds everything has been returned to how it was, save for the early death of his beloved pet Shalat. And we have a question: what caused Spock to go back in time to save himself the first go around? This is likely an example of a predestination paradox, causality loop, or similar time paradox.
Well, we know how the Bureau of Temporal Investigations feels about those, right?
Absolutely. And then also
There's a
I guess
DS9 joke, a Sub-Commander. You'll get it when we get through.
Oh, I've seen Trials and
DS9.
Tribulations.
Oh, okay.
So I know at least that. But yeah.
Very good.
Star Trek 3: The Search for Thelen. Joel says, I think it was that Spock was not in the present to go back and save himself. Being on Orion was incidental. Yeah, interesting. The time travel stuff, it's like it's I don't think too hard about it. And it just all, I just kind of accept it. Temporal mechanics is really, really weird, but I do like time travel.
I actually really like time travel, and so many of the great Star Trek stories. I say this all the time, but City on the Edge of Forever, Yesteryear, Yesterday's Enterprise, Trials and Tribulations, Voyager did Timeless. Like a lot of like the greatest episodes of the entire shows, like they tend to be time travel-y.
Time travel-y is one thing. Time travel, like Yesteryear, or I'm sorry, Yesterday's Enterprise, I don't consider a time travel episode.
It's like an alternate timeline.
Yeah.
Right. Well, timey-wimey. It's all timey-wimey stuff.
No matter what, you have to kind of not question it when it's a time travel episode, because then you can question it to death.
I happen to be an amateur, like physics kind of
time
enthusiast, and an amateur time traveler. I've messed up a lot of timelines. I'll just say that. but
so
yeah,
you're the one to blame.
It gets weird and spooky when you go down to like those quantum theories and time travel and how it works and stuff. So yeah, best not. Our minds cannot comprehend the fourth dimension.
I think my issue is more with how easy it is to time travel. If it's like this, where they could just go to the Guardian, hey, I want to go be groovy, baby. Take me to the 60s and just dance for a little while and come back. Like, that bothers, like, if I were to nitpick. But that's the thing. I don't really try to nitpick this show because it doesn't really, I don't feel like it merits that kind of nitpick, So
sure, but this is interesting because they're using the Guardian. So this is like a follow up to the Guardian of Forever, and it looks like Starfleet is still using the Guardian of Forever to further exploration. They're just doing time travel kind of exploration, which is really interesting. And it's further another connection is in Star Trek Discovery when the Guardian of Forever comes back. He even implies or says that he's been used to do stuff like this, like
people wanted to use them during the
to use them, so
they go into hiding.
Yeah, so you had to go into hiding.
But the original series set a precedent of like historical exploration with time travel. They did that in Assignment Earth. So there was a time when Starfleet was okay with that. Clearly later. They eventually are like, yeah, we should not do that.
This is probably. Do you think this is before the Department of Temporal Investigation?
Yeah, I think this is before I think this is before the implementation of like the Temporal Prime Directive. If you want to make all that fit into canon and into the Star Trek history, like it's not that hard to place it.
Put it in there.
I'm just gonna say that the entire reason the Federation is even successful in the Prime timeline is because they've been abusing the Guardian forever until they get the timeline they want.
Jill says, "I hope they learn not to use the Guardian for tourism after this."
I
Which
mean,
is
even in
pretty
the
funny.
original series, they always, sort of deal with the consequences of traveling in time. Like, this is a powerful thing rather than kind of willy nilly a la, Doctor Who kind of going here and there. And it doesn't, it doesn't really sort of matter. But yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Some of the best episodes are time travel episodes. It's just, it's hard to, they never totally make sense in my mind, but they're absolutely great episodes.
Sub Commander, it looks like they fixed the collar here.
They
So
did,
yeah.
yeah. So this is not some alternate timeline where they
Yeah.
didn't make that costume change.
It's not the first coloring, or not the last
Yeah,
coloring error
I
we're
don't,
going to
yeah,
see
it
in
definitely won't.
the
Yeah,
animated
it's
series.
true.
That's part of the charm of it, It's like
Absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, interesting. I didn't even, it's so funny that I never even like watching it like all these times. I had no like I never noticed that he's not blue like other Andorians. It's so
Yeah.
funny. So that was a cool thing when you pointed that out, Father. It's just funny how I like by default I was like, oh, he's Andorian, he's blue, but now I see it. So it's like the blue dress controversy. We should post this on on Twitter and ask people, is he blue or is he gray?
I think he's stone blue.
Wasn't there, like, didn't Roddenberry at one
Oh,
point,
snap.
just looking at Guardian of Forever, didn't he at some point try to develop a script for Star Trek 2 that involved them using the Guardian Forever and the Klingons going through the Guardian Forever, and it had to do with JFK and Spock like stopping him from, or making sure he got killed, or it was some convoluted, terrible story. But I think they tried to use the Guardian Forever in that too. It's an irresistible idea.
I agree. Here we get the little breakdown of figuring out what happened. So Spock has to use his memories versus the record, and yeah, so both Spock and Amanda apparently die in this timeline. Amanda also leaves Cerec after Spock dies, which is interesting. So, there's a lot of interesting things in this episode because you do see like, again, like as far as animation goes, for me anyways, I perceived a lot of like really cool kind of like things that they tried to kind of convey emotion, and it works. It's like like Amanda sometimes shows her frustration with like an extended blink or like just like an expression of worry, and I love that at the end when Spock says, "I choose my Vulcan way," like how she kind of closes her eyes and she's almost like you could tell she's like happy for him and maybe relieved, but also a little bit like disappointed. Yeah. And I think they carried that into the Kelvin. There's a lot of this. I think they carried that into the Kelvin, the 2009 film as well, like with their relationship, where Spock also comes to tell Amanda, that I've chosen the Vulcan way. And, she says, "I'm proud of you no matter what." But I sense a little disappointment maybe that, he is rejecting his human side. And then Jill pointed out earlier, like, it is pretty brutal when Spock describes, of course he's not being brutal. He's just being, transparent and like, like a Vulcan, but when she says how, he says, what was it?
About the
yeah, here it is. Spock was ashamed
oh.
of her, of having
yeah.
her traits. So he was like, yeah, you have like the traits and you're ashamed of it. Like he says that to like young Spock. I don't think older Spock is ashamed, but like it is interesting that he would recall that to younger Spock and stuff like that.
That line very much reminded me of the line in The Naked Time when, Spock says, after being under the influence of the, alcohol-like disease from the planet, "Jim, when I feel friendship for you, I'm ashamed." It's kind of like a same sort of thing as being embarrassed. I mean, it's like not having come to terms with it. So, I mean, I think later Spock obviously has come to terms with all this sort of stuff, but early Spock is still trying to sort it out.
Jill asks, Cerec was really rough on Spock in this episode. What are your thoughts? I thought he was also it's weird. I definitely, but I think of it as like a Vulcan thing. Like I just think of Vulcans as being very like direct and blunt and not particularly like interested in, how it makes you feel. So I think that's how he's treating Spock, like he would treat any Vulcan. But he does say, but there's definitely like a lot to unpack there, Jill, because he also apologizes to Spock, older Spock. He's like, I'm sorry you had to witness these like, kind of displays of emotion. It's like very embarrassing, and I like that Spock says, what happens in the family stays in the family. There's like all these like little moments there. But what do you guys think about Cerec's treatment of Spock?
I think it's in line with, we heard that they had like a little bit of a rocky relationship growing up. Sark definitely, he cares about his son, but he can be like a little stern in a way that probably a lot of people find relatable with their fathers.
Here's the scene that I was referring to. Ruben or Subcommander, any thoughts on Sarek?
I like that music in the picture you had before when he's looking at the city. I like the little music that plays during that scene. I actually wrote it down.
Yeah.
It's like a little kind of melody, soft version of it sounds like the main theme.
Interesting.
So it was a really nice little moment. That moment right there. Sarek said, no, I agree with all of you. I mean, I think it's just representative of that kind of stern relationship, or not stern. It's like you said, that Vulcans are just very matter of fact, and which makes them seem very cold and uncaring, and Sarek's just like that. He's very direct, and go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, I'm just thinking about the question, and in general, I didn't. I thought Cerec was fairly sympathetic in this. I mean, yes, he was being hard on Spock, but I guess the scene in here, Jill just mentions it when they're talking about this. I forget the name of the test that he had to.
The Kazwan ordeal, yeah.
Yeah, and he's being frank with Spock and saying that if you do fail this the first time, that's okay for Vulcans, but for you, you really need to come through on this. You need, because they're going to make fun of you if you don't.
You're to be judged twice as hard as anyone else.
And it's sort of reminiscent of how you read about, I just finished this Duke Ellington biography, and you're reading about I had to be extra good, when as a black man in a white society, because they were going to hold me to a higher standard just to let me be acceptable. So it kind of, in some ways it's tough love, but he's like preparing him. If you are going to be a Vulcan, if you're going to choose this path, it's going to be harder for you, and you can't fail. But you'd like to think that some part of him would have known that Spock, his son, would have known his son well enough that he was pretty sure he was going to succeed at this task. He just would have known his abilities, because to demand, success when there's reasonable uncertainty, that can be hard.
That's a really good point. And it's also, it made me recall the TNG episode Cerec, when Jean-Luc melds with Cerec to give him some emotional stability during a diplomatic event. But yeah, I think he mentions things like something along the lines of I didn't tell Spock how much I loved him, or that I was proud of him, or something like that. There was some regrets, that he showed. So that episode, I think, beautifully kind of answers that question of how did Cerec feel about Spock? He did have those feelings there, but was just not a culturally acceptable thing to express that kind of stuff, especially not when, again, like what you said, that makes complete sense. It's Spock, in this society clearly has to work, even harder to just fit in, not even to just to be considered part of the society. Good discussion points. But yeah, those Vulcan kids are really they're really rude to Spock over here. But yeah, what do you guys think of this whole scene, and and the I guess we don't get much of Vulcan school, but I guess they're all trained. Maybe they're all dressed like this because they're training for the Kazwan ordeal. It does look like the kind of stuff you would wear when you go out into the wilderness to survive, surviving with the minimal stuff. So maybe all of his peers and him, have been training for the Kazwan ordeal, and that's why they're dressed like that. Because we do see a variation later when they're in class in Star Trek 2009. They're wearing those what you would imagine a Vulcan kid would wear, typical robes and stuff like that.
Yeah, they're in
Well,
those little dimples where they're like reciting and learning stuff.
It,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it bothers me more that we have the Birdman historian is fully nude. It's like, man, like
Yeah.
that's I mean, infinite diversity and infinite combinations. That's like kind of a weird thing to, I'm gonna work with this naked guy who's like
He's
a,
got
letting it
fur,
all
Father. He's got fur on his
letting it all hang
nethers.
out.
Feather.
Yeah,
Yeah.
feathers. Sorry, he's got feathers on his nethers.
I have the same
that
complaint
rhymes.
about
I-
Chewbacca.
Yeah, but
I
you
think
can
I
see
think it's
his
weird that
cloaca.
Chewbacca doesn't. I'm like, put some
Cloaca.
pants on or something. Like,
It would be called a
Uh,
cloaca, right?
I think
Yes.
something like that.
ask Aaron about the terminology groin plumage. That's how you can tell his people apart from the score that we'll meet
Okay.
later.
They just always drew him from the right angle so you can't see the little twirly.
Oh my.
Oh my.
He has a feather bikini, says Jill. That's pretty funny.
But like for the bullying scene, it's interesting. Putting the clothes aside for a minute, what there is of the clothing, the scene itself, it's interesting. I remember having a conversation when I first got to college in 1993 on the old Star Trek L mailing list, which is kind of like an alternative to Usenet, about the language used in Journey to Babel. The other kids tormented you, saying that you weren't really human, and discussing with someone, well, if that's kind of emotional and not logical to like yell and bully someone, so are the
Mhm.
Vulcan kids really doing that, or are they just stating facts, but it feels like a torment to Spock because he hates to hear it? Like, could they just be saying this logically? You're not really Vulcan, your mother is a Terran, your father brought shame to it, and just I think that might have been kind of interesting if the kids had a totally flat sort of Vulcan-esque delivery, but
like what they did in Star Trek 2009, I thought that was closer in line to that. Like they were.
I disagree. I think Star Trek 2009 was pretty
like-
similar to what we got here, and I like that the Vulcan youths, they haven't quite learned to suppress their emotions, so they're still like a little emotional, but like they're especially like the way 2009 does it, where it still felt very Vulcan to me, because it's like, oh, have you prepared new insults for me today? Affirmative. It's like they're very like, it's like very like procedural, it's like,
I guess that's what I meant, that it felt more like how
Right,
Vulcan,
right.
like kids emulating their adults banter, adults bantering.
but it's still
like adult
like
Vulcans.
it's emotional, and how like mean spirited it is to be like, your father married her, that human whore, or whatever he says in 09. It's
that's what he says. Yeah.
I also feel like
So-
bullying is logical depending on your point of view, depending on your end game.
What do you mean?
If your end game is to be, let's say, the best student, and there's another student who potentially threatens that, but they're susceptible to being bullied, and you want to be the best student, then logic would dictate in that bizarre sense that you bully him to ensure your victory, so to speak.
That's an interesting thought. I
you
don't
know-
think I agree with that.
No, I don't agree with that either. I'm just saying that it really depends on your point of view, like what's
that's
considered
interesting.
bullying in a way.
But I also think that, like,
I'm just trying to think from a Vulcan's point of view.
I
Why
think
would they
that's-
still bully? Is it just an
I
emotional
see where
thing,
you're. I see
or
where
is
you're
it just
going.
like a more logical thing where they see it as a way to hold him down because he kind of has he threatens them,
I see where you're going with this. I think in a
Still emotional at the
situation.
end of the day.
I think in a situation where you're like Ender's Game, the book comes to mind. Like Ender uses force to stop people from bullying him, like extreme force, like such amount of force that it's like, like, oh, you're never gonna do that again, right? But he does take a lot of bullying, and he's definitely the smartest kid. So I think bullying goes, sometimes it's based on like kids being maybe, like I think I see what you're saying, like those bullies were trying to get him down and like remove him from the equation, so to speak,
knock him
or
off his
like
pedestal.
or shake his confidence or whatever. But yeah, in this case, in most cases, I think like, yeah, bullying probably comes more from the bullies having an insecurity rather than like strategy. I think,
sure.
And children are just kind of naturally mean. Like, I think
Mean,
kids
yeah,
are just
true.
kind of assholes. You kind of
just
have to
think
like
in
teach
general-
people to be nice.
Yeah.
I kind of think of the Vulcans as not being bullies because it seems illogical. I'm not talking about these kids in particular. I'm talking about Vulcan society in general, Like, I still feel like, you have two Vulcan politicians vying for the same position, logic dictates you want the position, you feel you're the, well, see, that's where the emotion comes in. You feel you're the better choice. Let's say if we're going to make
Well,
it
a Vulcan would
innocent.
know they're the better choice because they would have analyzed like the record of the opponent and just
It's
stated
just
it as a
interesting. It's
fact.
interesting to think about that.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, this could be such a good discussion. I mean, because you kind of think of Vulcan philosophy as being based around logic, but that's really only a component of it. I mean, they also stress the kind of like the pacifist nature of the planet based on their
Right.
history. And if you think of logic just taken as an abstract thing of, uh, of an interpretation of facts or the world that's going to, you know, provide the least resistance, be the most rational way to get from point A to point B, then you can use it in the service of any goal, no matter how. I mean, the goal can be a horrible goal. You could, let's wipe out every other life form in the universe except for us. Let's find the most logical way to do it. So, I mean, you have to kind of pair it with another sort of philosophical goal that is that use it for, I guess what we would say is for good, but it's just that one final note on the bullying scene. I mean, it is interesting to think of it as like, okay, these Vulcan kids, they haven't learned how to get their emotions under check yet, so this is a demonstration of that. But if they did play it completely flat, as if they were in control of their emotions, then that might be interesting, because then it doesn't undermine sort of the revelation later in this episode where older Spock is trying to tell younger Spock Vulcans do have emotions, and this is I almost like this idea that Spock is confused because it seems like he's the only one who has emotions. He's the only one that's dealing with this. I always like interpretations that make Spock unique. And if he was feeling tormented just by virtue of what they were saying rather than how they were saying it, but then hearing that, what, they all have emotions inside them too, and they're just coping with it, and that's how you have to live your life too. It might be, I don't know, that might be an interesting way to have the scene go down. So I mean, I think there's not a right answer here or anything. It's just a fascinating idea.
Just a thought experiment.
Yeah, real interesting. But
Trying
also it
trying to decipher the culture, an alien culture, or fictional alien culture.
I think this is also the kind of like, until Star Trek 2009, like one of the few glimpses or the only glimpses we get of Vulcan's childhood. And it's interesting how similar it is in the sense that like, like kids are kind of allowed to explore and experiment, and maybe Vulcan kids go through periods where they explore like and experiment with emotions and things like that.
It could be like that Amish thing where you go in those Amish communities as a teenager. You get that 1 year of whatever Jungspringen or whatever it's called, where you just go out and check the world out, and then you can decide, do you want to stay in the Amish community? Or actually, that's really neat. Someone should base a sci-fi thing off that. But anyhow.
Yeah, it's amazing how little we know about Vulcans, even though we know a lot about Vulcans. Or
I
feel
how like
much
we know quite a bit about. I think they're like either the number one or number two most detailed species.
But even there's still so much to learn about them. Like, I think you're right that they're the most developed in Star Trek, but like, what do we really know about daily life on Vulcan? We've never really kind of seen that, except a little bit on Enterprise or stuff like that. But we haven't never actually had a show set on another planet completely or anything like that, or like for a long time. But I do recall, actually, I did like seeing in Enterprise when T'Pol returns to Vulcan and you meet her. I think it's her mother, right?
Her mom,
like,
yeah,
her mom and stuff like that. That was a little glimpse in Vulcan life, and that was pretty cool because you saw like people who she knew and stuff like that. Like who she was betrothed to, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, you actually see T'Pol get married.
Yeah,
to that.
That's right.
Vulcan
That's right.
dude.
So yeah, I do agree that we get a lot of Vulcans, more than the others, but I think there's still so much more. Here we have like Spock. This was trippy to me too. That Spock got to go back in time. Like, this is kind of an interesting like thing, just like that we all kind of might want to experience. Like, I kind of would like to go back in time and check out what I was like.
I would
from
love
a different
to
perspective.
Yeah, I've always, ever since I was a kid, I always thought it was a cool idea. Like, I guess because watching Back to the Future, but I would always love to like go back and like that, meet my parents when they were younger and see what they would be like. But yeah, I like the idea here of like Spock getting to like go back and see his mom and dad when they were probably like closer to like the age he is. I mean, I guess Cerec's like over 100 years old, but Amanda's like the age he would be.
Totally, yeah. Amanda must get kind of lonely, says Jill. There's sometimes no wonder she left after Spock died.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
what
I
about
mean,
couldn't she keep company with Cybok and Michael though, right?
oh, this is interesting too. Like, because Michael would definitely be somewhere doing. Maybe she's probably off at school or something like that. But it is interesting now to think of Michael in the landscape. Even though you don't see her, she's probably a part of this story.
Well, we don't know if this is before they adopted her or not.
Well, I think Spock in here is because he says that the Kazwan ordeal is like how you is kind of like the Vulcan coming of age thing. So my imagination is that it's like being 13 or whatever, like in human years. Spock seems so much.
I think he's younger than that. I think he's younger than 13 here.
I don't know, but like maybe 10. I mean, or who knows? Who knows? But he can't be much. I think he's much younger when he meets Michael in Discovery than this. This seems like a little bit of an older version of Spock.
Well, I think we have I think we have like an exact year for
Michael
when they
coming
meet.
in.
I don't know about here.
I think Spock's already like 30 here, and he just loves wearing that outfit.
I mean, I almost wore that same thing today.
I mean, not gonna lie, if I saw someone wearing that at the gay club, I'd totally be like, "Hey, Kazwan ordeal."
Speaking of the Kazwan, Tuvok talks about doing a similar ritual, but he gives it a different name when he was a kid. Yeah, I mean, they mine a lot of stuff from this episode and later Star Trek. Worf mentions the Vulcan Forge to Jadzia. He wanted to like go on vacation there. He's like, let's go on an excursion through the Vulcan Forge and test our bodies in the extreme Vulcan desert. And then we visit the Forge and Enterprise. What else came from this? The Andorian stuff I mentioned earlier. The stuff they pull into Star Trek 2009. So, this is a cool thing. The design of Ichea actually came from a fanzine. Someone had drawn this teddy bear creature based on Amanda's description in Journey to Babel. I don't know if that was like T Negative or one of the other big fanzines around this era, but yeah, they I guess Dorothy liked it, and so they used that for this. Maybe the Filmation guys saw it and liked it. I don't know.
I think one other thing which I don't like about this episode is that there's a big moon back there, and the first broadcast Star Trek episode, The Man Trap, Spock clearly says Vulcan has no moon. I've always loved that line. I love that moment between Spock and Uhura. So the fact they have a moon there kind of annoys me, but they revisit that in the novel Spock's World by Diane Duane, which is one of the few novels I've actually read, and then she sort of makes it work by saying it's not a moon, it's actually a planet that's very close, so you can kind of see it in the sky, it's so close. But actually it looks beautiful, but I really love that moment where Spock says Vulcan has no moon, Miss Uhura.
But then this could be a planetoid, right? Like Romulus and Remus, maybe that's like a sister planet moon, or I don't know. You're right.
No, it's a cool picture. It's a cool sci-fi
well, then
picture.
In Star Trek 09 too, when they drop Spock off on Delta Vega, which is weird because there is a Delta Vega on the outskirts of the galaxy and where no man has gone before, but whatever planet he's on that they're calling Delta Vega in Star Trek 09, I just assume it's that planet that you see here and in the motion picture.
Or Geek Filter says, I'm pretty sure that I figured that out. It's supposed to be a sun, but they didn't note the color.
Well, I like that. That would make
that would make a lot more sense considering the size, like a sunrise or a sunset. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Okay, so this is interesting, Starfleet boy. So this episode takes place in the year 2237, and Michael Burnham, her parents died in 2236, so she would have been adopted by by Cerec and Amanda like shortly after. So this would have been like around like the same time. Actually.
Okay, so he's 7, which is interesting. Like that's like a coming of
the same age as Nimoy, right? He's born in like 30 or 31, right? This is happening in the 60s. Yeah, no, it's like He's like, because he says, "Show me Vulcan from 30 years ago," and he goes back, and they do say he's 7 at the time that they have to do this test when they're 7 years old. I mean, Nimoy was already a little older than that, but he was 37 in the original series. So, which anyway, but
Interesting. Very cool. Good discussion. This is the scene where Spock. We were talking about this earlier, where Spock and Cerec have like a little pep talk or whatever you want to call it. Uh, and by the way, I love their home. It does look as expansive as the home we see in Discovery. Like the home that we see in Discovery looks huge and kind of has a museum quality to it.
Yeah,
and I think that
was a Canadian mathematician's home in like near Toronto. He's like designed like that weird house, and they shoot in Discovery.
Shit, I should have done way better in math. If you can get a house like that from being a mathematician, that's awesome. Like it's great.
Well, I assume he's probably born into a privileged family or married,
possible. Yeah,
married a wealthy spouse or something.
Jill's also doing the math in the audience, and so is Geek Filter providing us. January 6th. 2230 is Spock's birthday. Something good to celebrate on January 6th. And then Jill points out those look like Calto topiary trees. Tuvok would approve. Interesting. But yeah, so Spock gets it in his head that he needs to go and practice. So he goes out into the wild, but his loyal pet Ichaya, sensing danger, or having an instinct that he should follow, goes ahead and follows. And I like this scene where Spock it's kind of sad because it makes it more poignant when Ichaya dies later, that Spock is kind of like, this might work on my mom, but it doesn't work on me. And you know how you sometimes have to be a little hard on your pet, like use a different tone and stuff like that.
A lot of animals have learned that if they look cute, they'll get treated better.
Yeah. So yeah, and then they feel guilt. Animals are very feeling. Speaking of feelings, it's interesting because Vulcans do have to deal with the emotions of their pets, and so poor Ichaya here feels so sad.
Yeah, he doesn't know to suppress his emotions and be dedicated to pure logic.
But Geek Filter, you only get decor if you're smarted.
Very Vulcan.
And then Jill wants to know how the Fang broke. There's a story there for maybe a future Star Trek book, or maybe it's been addressed. But Geek Filter says it's Cerec's pet first. It was Cerec's pet first, so who knows? Maybe a young Cerec story. Yeah, that's actually a great idea. Ooh. But yeah, so Ichaya goes out, and then again, one of the things that I really love about the animated series is just like that, like what I think someone pointed this out earlier, is like you can go places you couldn't go in the original. It was Father. You can go places you couldn't go in the original series, and we really see a lot of cool aspects of Vulcan. And what I like also is that we're used to Vulcan. Not we're used to, but I think I'm guilty of like kind of just like saying, oh, Vulcan's like a desert, but it has a lot of like diverse kind of landscapes around it. There's like a huge like body of water on Vulcan. There's like snow areas, things like that. So
snow in the same sector. Fantastic. Fascinating.
So we see like these mountainous regions that don't look like what we've seen before, and I love that this episode like shows us all these things. This kind of looks like Mordor here to me, but I'm a little my mind's a little bit on Lord of the Rings at the moment. But yeah, so this is where we get the what was it called again? The El Macha,
La Macha.
La Macha. Thank you, La Macha. He's the color of matcha. So the La Macha comes out and
green,
threatens to attack, and good eye Chaya like defeats him. Well, not defeats him, but
it's
like
chai versus matcha. Yeah. Chai versus matcha. Wow, gosh, this is like
there's a whole tea motif going out here. That's funny. But yeah, anyways, so that happens. I love this scene, and then Spock gets on top over here and gives him the Vulcan neck pinch to subdue him. And I like to see young Spock giving Ichaya affection and hugs. Like it's just like something that he's doing. I don't think other Vulcan children do this. Like it seems like a very Spock specific thing to me, but he does seem to give a lot of love to Ichaya. And then of course we get the little conversation here between Spock and young Spock
Spock
that
changes the timeline in his favor.
yeah, exactly. Well,
The
it's not the
original
first time.
timeline should be that Spock died when he was 7 years old.
Well, also he's been saved a couple of times because later he runs away when Michael pisses him off and almost dies in a similar fashion where Wild Beast could have killed him, but then the Red Angel comes and saves him.
Intervenes.
Yeah. So
Well, no, that was Michael who was gonna die, right? But it was Spock who saves her.
Oh yeah, sorry, the same thing. Yeah, I don't know why I thought it was Spock again, but yeah, Michael almost dies. But it's her mom that saves her. And right, like
right, because Spock
yeah.
told his parents where she was,
what
and then
happened.
goes out in the shuttlecraft and the Vulcan
right.
shuttle and gets her.
That's right. Very interesting.
But yeah, in the audience, Jill is asking if that creature showed up in Enterprise, and yeah, they're actually chasing is it Archer and T'Pol in the desert?
Yes.
So
yeah, the Amachas come in, right? They look kind of different in Enterprise. I gotta see if I can.
Or no, it's the I think it's just the Salot.
The Salots. They were Salots.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like Archer is like, your people's kids keep those as pets or something like that. And,
oh yeah, you're right.
And T'Pol's like, yeah, Vulcan children are very
attention.
disciplined, and always have to make sure they feed them on time and something like that.
Oh yeah, here we go. Wild. Oh, I'm looking at it for the first time. It kind of resembles Ichaya. I was at least we can share this.
Yeah, throw it up there. The CGI, the 2004 era CGI.
TV CGI.
On network television. Yeah, that's not bad.
It's not bad.
Yeah, it's actually not bad at all. Very cool. So yeah, Vulcans keep these guys as pets. And then we learn that Ichaya is dying, and I like this scene because Spock originally was gonna go and get the help, but then young Spock is like, "No, this is my responsibility.
Yeah.
I got to do it." And then we get this montage of him running through the desert and making it to the healer's home, and here we see some a Vulcan residence other than Cerec.
The healer.
Cool.
Yeah,
the healer's residence and
with the beard.
He's an interesting character. He accuses Spock of crying wolf at first, which is funny because we find out that Spock's apparently a practical joker.
It happened one time 2 years ago. Yeah.
But it was unusual enough to give him a reputation. But I do like how he uses logic to kind of counteract this, and he says, like, do you know me to be, he's like, yes, blah blah, but do you know me to be a liar? I would never call you out unless a life was in danger. And like Spock kind of like, I like that the young Spock here, and you get the sense that like, this ordeal or whatever is really about maturing and making decisions like this, and not being, like, even in humans, like we do tend to, it's not dissimilar because we do tend to be more emotional when we're young, and we do as a society tend to teach our kids how to deal with and maybe even like manage their emotions, and hopefully as adults we don't make we don't have the same triggers that kids would, so there's a similarity here. There's a lot of relatability, I guess, to human maturity. But yeah, here's Spock growing up a little bit. But yeah, I like this scene a lot. I like the healer. What'd you guys think?
Yeah, well, just to dovetail on your comment there, yeah, I mean, in how many societies do we have, explicit sort of rites of passage, from primitive cultures up to, like bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs today or whatever, when, there is something that happens where, maybe we're not sending people out into the desert, although I think similar sorts of things still happen with some people across the world, but, something to kind of demonstrate and say, yes, now you're a man, or now you're a woman, or now you're a fully fledged citizen. But, But as far as this healer guy, yeah, he was okay. He came around. He was sort of a little judgy at first, but I like you said, Spock used his logic on him, and he kind of reminds me of a little bit. There was an old Dungeons and Dragons cartoon. God, I keep bringing this back to old 80s
I love that.
cartoons.
I do actually love that you're referencing all these cartoons. It's cool.
Yeah, the character was called Dungeon Master. But he was short, but his head looked.
You're talking my
like
language.
Yeah. I liked him. Okay, like Vulcans can canonically have beards. We've seen that.
This guy reminds me a little bit of oh my god, what's it called? Oh, what's a blonde guy? I don't know. It'll come to me later. Go ahead, Father.
This character reminds me of the Vulcan Elder we meet in the Voyager episode. I think it's called Gravity, but the one with Tank Girl, where Tuvok is stuck on the planet with but there's flashbacks to young Tuvok, and there's a Vulcan Elder that he encountered as a boy. Who's played by the dude from Gamesters of Triskelion, who is also he was in Deep Space Nine too.
Oh,
he was
Joseph Ruskin. Yeah.
Ruskin. Yeah. Then he was a Klingon in DS9, but he made like a good Vulcan Elder in Voyager. But yeah, he also had a beard. I remember when they had like bearded Spock in season 2 of Discovery. A lot of people were like, Vulcans don't have beards unless you're in the Mirror Universe. And it was like one of the multiple examples, in addition to Cybok, that I was citing, was like, no, we got like the dude in Yesteryear, we got like the dude in Voyager. So but yeah, it was cool. The green and purple colors are a bit much, but that's just kind of the visual style of the animated series. So like that too has its charm.
The 70s in general.
Yeah.
I like it. I like all this. I agree. The green's a little bright, but hey, he was chilling at night. Maybe this is like his nightgown.
Maybe that's like how like our like medical stuff, we always have like a red cross to like on ambulances and stuff. With like with Vulcan culture, it'd probably be like green because it's the color of their blood. So that's like their like medical color.
I love that. That's great. Beautiful.
That's very cool. Yeah.
I also think about that with like Romulans, how like all Romulan stuff is green. They always have like green ships and like green computer screens. So like from like a Vulcanoid perspective, like there would be like crimson red everywhere.
The Venture Brothers. That's what that guy reminded me of.
Oh yeah,
The Doctor and the Venture Brothers.
I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
So yeah, here unfortunately the healer does give the bad news that he can extend Achaya's life a little, but he would be in a lot of pain, or he can release him from life. And again, Spock is faced with like a heavy freaking decision when he's young. And
McCoy in Star Trek V with his dad.
Yeah.
Release me.
Yeah, how's he know they're not going to find the cure for this poison? It's just like not long after they found the cure, the goddamn cure. Yeah.
But alas, Spock has to make the difficult decision, and just like this whole thing like really chokes me up.
But this is really his rite of passage. This is him maturing. This, not the dumb desert survival games.
Right.
I think this is I had to like expose you guys to it again because this is where I start crying.
It's heartbreaking. Actually a couple of years ago, it was like right when COVID hit, right when everything shut down. That was when we had to put my puppy to sleep.
I remember.
And I had initiated a rewatch of the animated series because I wanted to cover it on Text Trek before Lower Decks premiered later in 2020. And it just so happened to coincidentally like fall on like I had just started rewatching, and I watched the first episode, and then found out I had to put my dog to sleep and did that, and then like the next episode up was this one, was Yesteryear. So it's like, what, I'm actually gonna like just go ahead and watch it, and it was a very emotional experience, but I felt very connected to the story at the moment, so I'm glad I was able to do that. I felt like I could really appreciate it.
Right on. But
I cried a lot.
Yeah, I bet.
It's a man alone in a dark living room in the middle of the night, crying, watching a cartoon from a decade before he was born.
That's an interesting picture that you just painted. And Aaron says that was tough, Father. Yeah, it was tough, but yeah, it's something we have to face with our. It's also it's one of the things of keeping a pet that it inevitably you learn about life and death because they tend to have shorter lifespans unless you have a tortoise as a pet.
Galapagos
A
tortoise.
Galapagos tortoise that can live for 200 plus years, and then
or a parrot. Parrots
right.
live a long time.
Yeah, a long
right.
time. So
So-
it will mourn you, perhaps instead.
Probably not.
But yeah, so we get the sad moment here, and the resolution when he comes home and he tells Cerec, oh, this is what happened, and he sounds very serious and very like adult, if you will, or mature is the better word, perhaps. Here, and Cerec's really impressed, and then he tells Cerec here that he chooses the Vulcan way, and Cerec is pleased with that, and we get that like little moment that we talked about. And I like this because like they have no I wonder if years later when Sarek's like, you're welcome in our home anytime, and Spock's like, yeah, I'll never come back here again. And, like I wonder when Spock grew up, if like years later, if like Cerec like figures it out, or if post at some point maybe they talk about this
Like after Star Trek 4, when they have that moment where
exactly.
like they reconcile in Star Trek 4.
Yeah.
Maybe like after that they talk about this, like, yeah, like remember that was me. I was the cousin that showed up.
Or I wonder if like cousin Selleck actually shows up at some point, and Sarek's like, "Oh, it's so nice to see you again," and cousin Selleck's like, sorry." But yeah, so we get that nice little wrap up, and then in typical Star Trek fashion, we get like a nice little joke at the end with McCoy and Spock saying, well, if things had been different, you'd be calibrating those instruments for an Andorian instead. But yeah, so that's it. This is a delightful little episode. We're at the hour here, and I know our sub commander needs to cloak at some point soon. So
yeah, this is too fun. They just mess around the first 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Oh, I'm glad you're having fun. I hope the audience is too. I had a lot of fun. But yeah, I really like this episode. And again, I just love that that future Star Trek endeavors have mined a lot from this episode, just increasing the richness of this episode and like all the I think I like that term canon connections, and and stuff like that, or continuity connections. And yeah, again, I really enjoyed this episode. So as my rating, as per tradition, I'm gonna give this episode another 10. Animated series, like 10 out of 10 here. So yeah, what did you guys think? Ruben, why don't you tell us, or Sub Commander, why don't you go and tell us your final thoughts and a rating if you choose?
Yeah, no, I liked it quite a bit. The only thing I will say about it, this is totally obscure, that because the moon thing has been resolved now. I think that was the sun, so I'm happy with that. I met Mark Leonard once at a convention, and I remember asking him about that scene with him and Leonard Nimoy at the end of Star Trek 4, and I asked him, "Can you raise one eyebrow, like Leonard Nimoy can do?" He said, "No, I can't," because in that scene he raises both of them. But in this episode, Cerec raises one eyebrow, so it's totally non-canon. Totally non-canon. So I'll give it 9.9 as a result.
A little, just for the one raised eyebrow. I cannot do that either, by the way. I cannot raise. Well, kind of. It's a real strain. I have to really work at it to do it. I can't do. Oh, Ruben can do it. Look at that. It's nice.
There we go. Yeah.
Good. So you really like this episode, a 9.9.
Yeah,
That's fantastic. Wow, Ruben.
For me, I it's a fun little episode. I like that these are just like 20-minute little romps, so it's not too much to ask for. I love DC Fontana too. That was the other thing I wanted to mention because she's one of my favorites. She was the first writer whose name I ever recognized, like on a TV show. Like I saw her name and I remembered it, and then saw it again and again. It was like, oh, it's like the same person writing these things.
And actually, as a kid, I did the assumption that she was hoping for, which is I assumed it was a male writer.
No, I
That's
remember.
why
Yeah, I
think
remember
she
years
went
later learning that
instead
she
of
was
using
a
Dorothy,
she.
she used DC to kind of slip past the
Yeah,
horrible.
she said people started buying more scripts from her when she started writing DC on them instead of Dorothy.
Yeah.
Right.
And she's starting off as a freelance writer.
Oh my gosh, this rating wins today. Aaron says 10 out of 10 Vulcan kids doing Zardoz cosplay. That's totally also a 10 from Jill. So very cool. Father, what about your final thoughts? And I know you like to give like a funny rating, so feel free to give one if you like.
I don't know how to give a, I don't know, like 30 years back in time travel out of the, what was the date, like the Vulcan, like the 22nd day of whatever,
Tameen, yeah, or something like
yeah, but yeah, I think this is a great episode. I think, widely considered maybe the best of the animated series. However, just to keep people excited for the remaining 20 episodes we're going to discuss. Well, I do agree this might be the best. There's actually 2 episodes that are more my favorite. Like there's 2 that I like, that I enjoy, that I personally favor over this one that we haven't gotten to yet. But I'll point them out when we get to them. So looking forward to those.
Right, very cool. Well, this was a lot of fun. Thank you so much, gentlemen. What do you got going on Text Trek, Fathery?
Well, you can check out our live show every Friday night at 7 p.m. Central, where we discuss the recent new episode of Star Trek. Right now, we're working our way through Lower Decks Season 3. We just covered Season 3, Episode 3, Mining the Mind's Minds last night. You can listen to that show as a podcast wherever you get your podcast. And we'll continue to work our way through Lower Decks, and then Prodigy coming up, and then maybe talk about some DS9 in early 2023, and wait for Picard to drop on February 16th. So even all the new Trek will be covered every week.
You and Dave can totally do it. I think you can do it.
I was talking to him last night, and yeah, we're gonna shoot for it. So yeah, we'll
nice.
finish DS9 before Picard premieres. Hopefully, that is the plan.
Ruben, what's going on the Guardian for Never's world?
For Never, baby. Usual for me, follow me on Twitter at rmartian. I post interviews with film and TV professionals, which I've been slacking on, but I'll put more up soon. And yeah, that's my usual stuff.
Nice. And Sub Commander, what are you doing? Are you doing anything fun tonight with TOS Saturday night, or anything else?
Maybe. I always plan to, and then I usually fall asleep. But yeah, they're doing, I think, iMud tonight. So if you're into that campiness, that's going on for TOS Saturday night. And this month, the prompts that I do, that Chris at Shelf Nerds does, they're the prompt.
Those are awesome. Thanks for reminding me. Yeah, shout out to Shelf Nerds. Yeah.
It's a thread trek, which is so for each prompt you're trying to find connections between different shows. So it's a challenge for me, who mostly knows one show. But yeah, that's all I got going on. Mr. Leslie seems to be having a hard time thinking of ideas, but we'll keep trying to work on that too. So
hey, yeah. maybe we'll come up with some here.
Oh yes, good point. Good point. Okay, yeah.
Leslie's still around, right? So yeah.
In fact, he was in this episode. I like to say anytime there's a red shirt who doesn't talk in the animated series, that's Leslie.
I chose that character as my space husband for this episode. So even the animated series.
Thalen?
Thalen's pretty hot too, I have to say, but yeah.
Leslie's log. Who the hell's this Andorian that showed up out of nowhere? And suddenly first officer.
Like if Leslie's immune to the he's immune to the time, the temporal change. That would be
nobody listens to him. So.
Yeah, nobody listens to him. He's like, I'm telling you, this Andorian is not our first officer.
Oh my goodness. Well, audience, thank you so much. Special shout out to Aaron in the audience. Thank you so much for coming to our chat. It was a real joy to have you there, and thanks for sharing the wealth of knowledge you have about the animated series with us. We hope to have you on a future discussion, and also everyone go buy his book, which is awesome. Him and Rich Shepis.
Oh wait, I did. I have one question about the planet.
Yeah.
How did they? Okay? There's a scene with the planet as like a 3:15. They show the planet, and the planet's kind of like moving.
What planet
was
are you
that
talking
animated,
about? Vulcan?
or was that?
Oh, the planet that
the planet at the
where the
beginning
Guardian
with the
is.
Forever. Yeah,
It
was
looked a lot like the
fascinated
TOS
by how they
original.
animated that.
Yeah.
Or if that was updated like in some sort of digital update.
No, I think that's the original animation, and I
Right?
feel like it's
It looked
not
cool.
that. Like they
Yeah,
use a lot of. I can't remember the name of the technique, but there's a technique where you have like these glass panes, and you can paint like you have different
Yeah,
layers, and you can
levels.
kind of like do like levels and
Like when
some things
like when a
to-
character has like a flashback or something, and like the screen does like the kind of like wavy effect kind of thing when they're like,
yeah, that's also
remember
yeah.
when it's like fades back. That's like an old it's an old trick. But yeah, all of this is like the original 1970s animation.
Right,
Yep.
nothing's been updated for this series, right?
No, I don't even think it's
Yeah.
like HD, but
It is
looks
HD.
Oh, it is
all,
HD.
It's all
That's it.
1080p.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. All right. Well, thank you, audience, for coming back with us. What's our episode next week again? It's
One of our planets is missing, I believe.
yes,
Which
so,
brings back a character from the original series. But I'll wait till y'all watch it to see who it is.
I think,
yeah, tune in,
okay.
tune in, and we'll see you guys next Saturday. Tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we'll be doing a Starfleet Boy Lower Decks discussion, and then at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Father, you're going to be on.
Yeah, we'll be over on Trek Central.
Yep, Father and I will be back on Trek Central talking the latest Trek, and also talking about probably all the fun stuff we're getting about the ships and everything from the Picard trailer, and I imagine we'll talk more about that stuff because there's a lot to talk about. So live long and prosper, everybody, and we will see you next